So anyways, welcome everybody to Seattle Revit User Group for June. Thank you for coming inside today on this gorgeous day outside. Well, hopefully there's going to be a lot more coming for all of us, especially after this weekend. It's going to be nice to actually start to get some sunshine on a regular basis. So, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Rob Bendix. I'm the president of the Seattle Revit User Group, as well as the design technology manager at Mulvaney G2 Architecture. And I, along with the rest of the SeaRUG board, welcome you guys to come out here today and join us, learn some BIM stuff, learn about Revit, all those good things that's progressing forward quite rapidly, I must say, for a lot of us. If it's your first time out here, we are an Autodesk Revit-centric user group. We definitely pride ourselves in collaborative learning presentations that don't necessarily go, but like discipline or flavor specific. But we definitely like to make sure that we're a very collaborative environment for all groups, for owners, developers, architects, engineers, contractors, subs, students, everybody out there in the AEC community. So, thank you for joining us today. Anybody here for their first meeting? I know there's a couple people. Yes, okay. Well, welcome. Hopefully we'll see you guys at more meetings in the future. A couple quick starter questions. Revit 2013 has been out a little bit now. Has anybody taken a shot at moving forward on a project or upgraded a project yet? Good. Well, there's a couple people taking the dive. Well, that's good. A lot of good stuff. We're definitely looking forward to moving forward with some projects for sure. A lot of good stuff in the feature set. And who here, I guess this is more related to the topic of discussion today, is responsible for, or either on a committee that's responsible for company standards for like BIM standards, et cetera. Pretty much a good portion of everybody here. That's great. Thank you for coming out. One quick little announcement before I get into some of my other announcements. We have a new SeaRUG board member that just joined us recently. Jamie Snyder, could you stand up really quickly and be recognized? Jamie's with GGLO, and he's actually going to be our new editor. So, editor is part and responsible for a lot of the website stuff. So those first introductions that you see when you go to SeaRUG.org, or maybe some upcoming changes that you see, I'm sure Jamie will have a lot to do with that. So it's not my fault if you see that. There's Jamie. You see him now. So, and Alfredo too. Everybody knows Alfredo. What's up, Alfredo? So, anyways, well, we're definitely glad to have him. He's been part of this group for a long time now, and now he's going to be helping on the board and helping move us forward. So we appreciate his help. Our sponsors, of course, we have to recognize our sponsors because without them, these meetings don't happen. Pretty much bottom line. So our executive partners for 2012, PPI, ImagineIt, and ID8. So we definitely thank them for their contributions this year, and look forward to support in the future, of course. Our premier partners, Quarry Group, ARC, and ABC Imaging. Quarry Group, actually, our sponsor for this month's meeting. And of course, our associate partners are professionals and other groups and organizations out there that are really behind what we're doing, in GLY Construction, Mulvaney G2, Leidig, PCS, Structural, Slater Partners, BN Builders, and FSI Consulting Engineers. So thank you for all those groups for supporting SeaRUG. And if you or your company has interest in also supporting, feel free to talk to me after the meeting. You can email sponsors@searug.org, or you can also go to the website and get some more information there as well. Okay, a couple of items. Some of these are kind of repeat slides, but we always like to remind people because for some reason a lot of people forget that they have some of these things available to them after meetings. So we always record our meetings, as this one is going to be today, so you can check those out. Usually a couple of weeks after the meeting is over, give us time to process it, get it up there. On the searug.org downloads page, we'll post videos and handouts or PowerPoint slides for these, so if you missed some notes or your pen couldn't keep up, don't worry. Within a couple of weeks, you'll be able to go back and recap a lot of stuff that was shown. Or even plan within your organization lunch meetings. They make for great sessions there for people that didn't get a chance to see it. And sometimes it can be really challenging to put all this stuff back out there to people that you saw. Of course, Revit Technology Conference. So this is the last time this slide will be up till next year because it's actually happening next week. So if you're going to it, I'm jealous. Don't tell me. I don't want to know. Hoping to go get into it next year. But if for some reason you want to go check it out, revitconference.com.au to get some more information there. Autodesk University, of course, this was just announced recently. Well, everybody knows it's typically at the end of November, beginning of December. But just an FYI, for the registration, if you're an AU Online member, starts August 28th, so which is not too long from now. I mean, it's June 20th already, so we're 2 months from essentially registration for AU. So if things move a little slow in your office for processing approvals and such, you might want to get started now if you plan on attending. And then also, we made a quick mention last time, but I just wanted to follow up with some of the national BIM standards information. Version 2 is posted. You can go, excuse me, you can go up to nationalbimstandard.org. It's actually free to view. You can check it out. It just requires a little sign up, and then you'll have access to the page that has all the documentation for version 2. It's not it's PDF form. You can download pieces of it and stuff, but it's nice that they're keeping it up there to resource to. For any updates that happen, you can always go back to it. So that released just a couple months ago. And when I was up there the other day, I also noticed that they have a webinar that's coming up. It's right there on their front page. It's on June 26th. So I thought it was interesting. It's not a full registration. They just have the link up there, and on that day, you just go up there and you sign up and you join in the session, and it's open to the first 125 people that jump in. So you might want to write that one down now because this meeting probably won't get posted by the time this session happens. So I definitely know, They'll do more of them? Okay, that's good. Excellent. So I'm definitely looking forward to that. I know a lot of us rely on standards, national CAD standards back in the day. I mean, even though we all evolve our standards and tweak them a little bit here and there, I think for the most part everybody would agree that starting with the BIM standards or CAD standards that over the years has just been a nice foundation to work with and then adjust. And then you find when when people go to other offices or whatnot that they all have a background in that, which is great because it's a nice starting point for introducing new employees to your standards. Because they already understand the basics of it. So I'm sure there'll be a lot of good information in there. I'm definitely going to do a big old cross-sheet comparison with my standards for sure, just to see what I need to get caught up on. Okay, so our sponsor recognition for today. So obviously, I mentioned before, our sponsors are a big part of what we do here. So we appreciate the generosity that they give SeaRUG to make this possible. And so I'd like to give some thank you to Quarry Group and Chris Hubbard for sponsoring this year, and this is their host meeting. So I'll just introduce Chris here and then let him take it from here because he's also doing our main presentation today. So many of you know Chris. He's here all the time. He's actually a board member. But some of the things you may not know about Chris, I learned a few things from him when I got his bio update. I couldn't memorize it, so I'm going to read it to you. Chris Hubbard. He's the BIM technology and practice lead over at the Quarry group. He's a passionate early adopter and technology expert. Chris is also a practicing architect, 15 years of experience in designing and building complex industrial, mixed-use, institutional, government, educational, churches, and healthcare. Chris is responsible for driving Quarry Group's technology strategy, leading our BIM consultants projects, or leading our BIM consulting projects, and developing best practices, data tools, technology interface, and BIM implementation. Chris is also focused on methods to mine, process, and extend meaningful BIM project data to project and enterprise stakeholders, furthering the value of BIM in the AEC and building management disciplines. He's a frequent lecturer, presenter of BIM. He's presented at Associated General Contractors, AGC, American Institute of Architects, Council of Educational Facility Partners, CSI, Puget Sound and Mount Rainier chapters, and your Seattle Revit user group. Chris is the process task chair of the consensus and testing team of the committee of NIBS. And he was also a big part of the development of National BIM Standards version 1. And also he involved in version 2 as well. He was. Okay. But you weren't the chair this time, just a contributor. Okay, so Chris is a registered architect and has a Master's of Architecture degree and a Bachelor of Science in Architecture from Lawrence Technological University. So, that was a mouthful. Anyways, I'm glad to have Chris here. I'm looking forward to a very good presentation from him, and as they always are. So, here's Chris Hubbard. Thanks.
Hello, everybody. As Rob said, I'm Chris Hubbard with Quarry Group. Glad to be here today. Real quick, just a real quick history. I think Rob covered a lot of it, but those of you that don't know who the Quarry Group is, we basically founded the group because we saw this huge gap in between what people were learning from software providers and actual function of the BIM software. And so we basically had figured out some implementation processes and designed our consulting to work around that. So for those of you that have not worked with Quarry Group, with just a little marketing here, we can handle all of your BIM consulting needs. We can produce BIM strategies, BIM standards, we can do conversions, training, we do modeling for some of our customers, constructability reviews, and standards compliance. So that's kind of the range of stuff that we handle on top of handling our own architectural practice as well. So, and then Rob pretty much covered me. Just a couple little things. I've been working in architectural office for 21 years. Can use all of the major BIM platforms, Revit being my favorite, but perfectly capable of ArchiCAD as well as Intergraph/Bentley. Okay, so how many people here have active Revit standards in their office? Okay. So, for those of you that don't, and those that you do, why do we organize? Okay. We're going to talk a little bit about some of my best practices for organizing your Revit models. And for those of you that aren't in Revit 2013, we are talking about some of the advantages that 13 has towards organization, but most of what I'm talking about will work in 12 and back. Okay, so we've got a couple of project browsers here. We have on the left side a number of elevations. We don't know what they are. They're just labeled 1A, 1B, 1C. User particularly felt that would be okay. On the right-hand side, we have all of the things broken down by view name conventions with some view organization as well. Okay. Second reason is we very often run into this where the user renames a view but doesn't necessarily associate it with the correct location. So here we've got one named level 3, but it actually goes down to level 1. And I see all these users come up to me and say, I'm clicking on level 3, but I can't see level 3. It's because you're associated with level 1, okay? So it's important that as users, as you guys work with your users and as users work through this process, that they understand how the views are associated and how the naming conventions work, and that you get the right views associated with the right information. Second thing, missing elements. So how many people here have opened a view expecting to see something only to have it not be there, okay? So we've got a parapet that's missing from this particular view. In this case, I happen to know because I did it, it is a incorrect work-setted element. Okay, so someone drew it on the wrong work set. We turned off the work set that we were looking for, or we weren't looking for, and you can't see it. Okay. The other reason could be someone hid it in the view. Okay. How many people here have run into hide in view stuff? Okay, where someone went and hid something, forgot to mention it. You open the view up and you can't see anything. Okay. Or someone developed a secret filter that they applied to the view that, again, has hidden something that shouldn't be hidden. Okay? All right, so our methodology uses multiple levels to organize our stuff, and we start at the macro and work to the micro. Okay? I've seen a lot of firms who manage this, but they typically manage it on a sort of a level playing field in that, oh, we're going to use all view naming conventions, or we're going to use all categories, or we're going to use subcategories, or we're going to use work sets, or we're going to use one of these things. But the fact is that a lot of these methods are fairly labor intensive, and therefore you don't get user buy-in. If you tell someone they've got to go through every view and hide the furniture category, they're going to revolt, and it's not going to happen. Okay? So what we want to do is we want to come up with a system that allows you to have a multi-layered attack on this so that you can work at the macro level and people can add stuff very, very quickly. But then when you get down into the micro level, they can then individually do it, and you don't have to apply that same micro level to every single view. Okay. We also want to be able to engage multiple levels of expertise. We all know the BIM manager in the firm and the lead BIM are perfectly capable of managing the Revit file, and it's going to come out perfectly when it's done. But you've got varying levels of users in your office who may or may not understand how this all works. So they're looking towards the people that come to these seminars to explain to them how all of this functions. Okay. So this is kind of my little graphic where we start at the top and work down, okay? So at our top level, we've got linked files. Then our next level down, we use work sets. Then we go to filters. Then we go to category overrides. And then we go to manual overrides, okay? So as you can see, labor-intensive wise, it goes from very little labor-intensive to very labor-intensive. So our level 1, linked files. How many people here use linked files internally to their office? So then you're linking your own files together as opposed to linking consultant files. Okay, good. So what this lets you do is it lets you break your files into subgroups, very similar to the way we used to do with CAD, where basically everything was XREFed. Okay, it helps you with multi-user interfaces. It solves some work sharing issues. However, in the process, it creates file linking issues. So it's not a perfect solution, but it's a great way to quickly break out entire parts of the model and link them back in. Okay? So, instead of setting up work sets, you create linked files. So, instead of work setting off the site plan and or the basement or maybe the structural, you would then pull all that out into a linked file and link it back together. Okay? Each linked file may have its own work sets, but they don't necessarily have to in many cases. Okay? You have to, of course, use coordinate sharing. And so you guys, if you don't understand how shared coordinates work, make sure you go back to one of the previous. We did record that one, didn't we? The shared coordinates one last year, yeah. Okay. So make sure you guys, if you don't understand how shared coordinates work, you go back to the previous year and look at the recorded one, because Teresa Martin did a great presentation on how to use shared coordinates. Okay. The other issue is you can only edit one file at a time. So unlike Revit, or unlike AutoCAD, where you can do the ref edit, in Revit you have to actually close one of the files to open the other one. Okay, and that can get old really fast. So when you're using the linked file system, make sure that you're keeping that in mind, that whoever's working on it can't edit both files at the same time. Okay. So the other thing you can do, and you need to do this, is if you're going to use the linked file as part of your overall model system, you need to make sure that there's views and work sets in the linked file that can be accessed from the master file. So this is kind of a little quick diagram where we've got two linked files. We bring those views into the master file and put them onto the drawings from the master file. Okay? A lot of firms I've seen try to print sets of drawings from multiple Revit files, and so you end up with, you know, file A is the floor plan, and file B has the site plan, and file C has the roof plan, and so on and so on. The problem that we've run into with that is that the section and detail system stops working because it can't cross files. Okay, but if you bring the views into the master file, you can use those views on your sheet, and then the system works better. It's still not perfect. Okay, when you use those views from linked files. You still have to have a live section to get it to work on the sheet. You can't use their section and refer to it. So when we link those together, we need to use either linked views to control the visibility in the master, okay, and this is on your Revit Visibility and Graphics tab, or we need to use custom filters that we're using from our local file to actually control how the elements looked in the linked file. Now, this only works if you don't have overlapping elements. So for instance, if you're bringing your MEP file in and your MEP doesn't have walls or doors or windows, you can go ahead and turn those functions off in your view and it won't affect anything. But you could also apply a filter that would change how the MEP displays itself using view range or something like that, so you can control it independently of your own file. Okay. Now, the way that we generally like to work with that is we generally like to set up special views in the linked files that we bring into the master and use by linked view. So that's on the left-hand side. Okay. We would pick a view from the linked file, bring it into ours, and that's the view we would produce. Okay. It's a lot less labor intensive than the custom methodology, but if there's no view set up, and if it's coming from a third party who isn't willing to set those views up for you, it's pretty much your only solution. Okay. Level 2, work sets. How many people here use explicit work set naming as opposed to just setting up one or two work sets? Okay, so it looks like a minority. So, to get your work sets to work for you, you have to set up explicit work sets. Okay? You have to define and set your scope for those work sets, and your users must utilize proper work set management, and you've got to have views created so that you can QC them. Does anybody here who's raised their hand for BIM standards have work set listed in their BIM standards? Okay. So, this is a work set dialog box from a very simple model that I have open in the background. Okay, it's basically just a 3-floor little tiny building, and as you can see, we've got 12 work sets already going, okay, just from this little tiny building. Okay, some of our projects have as many as 24, 25 work sets, and we use those to control how the model displays itself. So, the first thing is that you've named your work sets and given them scope. The second thing is you have to determine whether the work set is going to open or stay closed when you open the model. Okay? So when you guys have large models, you can close some of the explicit work sets to reduce the footprint in your computer. Okay? It doesn't destroy it, it doesn't unlink it, it just closes it from your particular computer. If you are not working on the roof, if you're not working on the site plan, if you're not working on the basement, you don't need to have those work sets open. It will improve performance on your model. Okay? But if you're not using explicit work sets, that won't work. Okay? If you have everything in work set 1, which is the default work set that comes up, you turn that off, you lose the entire model. Okay? Second one, and this is new to 2012, not 2013, is the visible in all views checkbox. Okay. We love this feature. I at first didn't think I would ever use it. I didn't quite understand it. But as soon as we started trying it, we really found it amazing. So each work set in a view has 3 states: a default state, a hide state, and a show state. Okay? And the default state depends on this particular checkbox. If you check it visible in all views, the default state for that work set in every view that it comes into will be to show it. If you uncheck that workbox, the default state will be to hide it. So if you're working with things like site plans or structural models or other large intensive things that get in your way, that cause problems with your detailing, et cetera, you turn that box off and those items will not display every time you make a new view. Okay. What we found ourselves doing prior to using this tool was we were making a new view and then immediately having to hide half our work sets. Okay. And that was fairly labor intensive. Every time you made a new view, the first thing you had to do is open up visibility and graphics and turn on and off a bunch of work sets. When we decided that, you know what, we keep turning off the same work sets over and over and over again, let's just go to the work set dialog box and turn it off there, and then when we make new views, it doesn't show up. Okay. Now the flip side is that sometimes when we need to see those work sets, we'll have to make a new view and we'll have to turn 2 or 3 on. But what we found is that we found more often we were turning them off than we've been turning them on. Things like site. Yes, Rob? You can, absolutely. So if the work sets are set to default, if they're not shown or hide manually, if they're set to default, they will behave in that manner. So if you've got a site plan that's showing a site model, your topo, your parking lots, your parking, and all that stuff is showing up in every single view, you go back to this workset dialog box, you turn that workset into visible in all views, you turn that off, it will stop showing in every view where it's set to default. Turn it on. You'll have to go back and turn it on where you want it. But again, you have to control these with the methodology of, you know, the site plan really only needs to show up in, you know, 5 or 6 views. I don't need it in my door details. I don't need it in my wall details. I don't need it in my roof details, but lo and behold, there it is. Okay? So if you turn off the site work set, as I've done here, okay, it won't show up in all those views. And in the half dozen views where you do need it, you go turn it on. Okay? It's pretty straightforward. So, designing a work sharing system. Okay, obviously we have to have some naming conventions for all of these. We have to understand what each piece does. Okay, so we want to clearly define what the scope is for each work set. And the problem when we first started using work sets, and we've been using work sets prior to borrowing, so we just learned to do it the explicit way and we just never stopped. We had arguments as to what goes into what. You know, it's like, well, where does the stairs go? Do the stairs go on the first floor? Do they go on the second floor? Do they go on the third floor? Do they go on the roof? Do they go on the basement? What work set do they go on? And we had so many arguments about that when we created a special work set just for stairs and elevators. Okay, so we have a scope for that. And then the second question came up was, does the walls that go around the stairs go on the stair work set or the individual floor that they're on? Okay. So I'm not here to tell you that you should put the stairs on a particular work set, but you need to figure out how those systems work. You need to create work sets that hide infrequent items. So as I just said, you need to set up what those work sets are that you don't want to see on a regular basis. Things like site, things like furniture. Should furniture show up in every single view that you make? Okay. I mean, you know, you cut a wall section and there's a couch sitting next to it. You really don't need to see that. Okay. Linked files. Should linked files show up in every view that you create? Okay. So if you're linking MEP, if you're linking structural, if you're linking site, do you want those to show up in every single view? And then we also use temporary work sets sometimes to try out different design options rather than use the design option tool because sometimes it just doesn't function the way that you want it to. So we'll make a temporary work set that we put stuff into, and then later we'll dump it into a different work set and or just delete it. Okay? And should that work set show up all the time? So the next thing we do is we create views that view a subset of those individual work sets. So we hide a number of work sets so that we can see just the pieces we're interested in coordinating. Okay? And we create view templates from those views to help us hide and show the work sets. And I'll kind of run a quick demonstration of how that works. And the last thing we do is we create quality control views so that we can go through and make sure everybody's drawing on the right work set. Okay? Now, in 2011 and back, you basically had to open up a 3D view and turn work sets on and off until you could basically see that they were all in the right spot. With 2012, we have the ability to color code them. Okay? So the first thing you can see is that my parapet on the left there is on the wrong work set. Okay? Yeah, it's clear. And that we're missing one on the right. Okay? Now, we don't know why it's missing. We just know it should be there, but it's not. Okay? And you can see I've got a view up here called WExterior/WS-QC, which basically stands, it's a working view. It's for the exterior only, so there's no interior work sets shown on this. Okay? And it's our work set QC. Okay? Next level. Once we've got all of our work sets worked out so that we have individual items shown in individual places where we want them to, or whole groups of work sets, we then use our filters. Okay? And filters was another one of those tools that when it first came out, I kind of looked at it skeptically saying, well, it's a nice tool, but I don't really see what I'd use it for. And shortly thereafter, found myself building hundreds of filters for every project. And again, this was prior to the workset visibility control, so we were using filters to control visibility of everything. And that's fairly labor intensive, which is why we inserted the work sets above it, because that's actually fairly simple. Okay? So what the filters do, how many people use filters? All right. Lots of people. So basically, you guys know what filters do. Use individual elements based on the properties of that particular element. And it's two steps. You create a filter criteria, and then you apply overrides based on that criteria. Okay? So this is the 13 filter dialog box, which gives you more options than the 12 did, mainly because it incorporates all of the various categories, and it gives you the ability to filter by selection set as well, and I'll talk about that in a minute. Okay? So on the left side is where you save all your filters, the middle is what categories those filters apply to, and the right side is where you set your criteria. Okay. How many people have these filters built into their templates? Okay. Just a hint. Good thing to do is to at least build the criteria into your template so your users can just grab them and use them. Okay. So we use our filters in a lot of different ways, but primarily we use it to override colors so that we can make sure that the right information is going into the right spot. We usually base it either on category, family name, and or type name. Sometimes we go by level, and sometimes we assign custom parameters. So, color-coded systems in MEP. So those of you that have used Revit MEP know that it comes with a series of pre-color-coded filters so that your pipes are green or purple and your ductwork is blue and pink. Okay? That's usually named by system name or system type. Okay? We also like to identify our walls based on function. So everybody knows that Revit's walls have an interior, exterior, retaining, foundation type of a function. Okay, and they also have the ability to be structural or non-structural, so we like to identify where walls are structural, where they're not. Okay, we often will color code views, so we have our working views and we color code those so that they turn up orange on the sheet, so we know what a working view, where we have a working section or a working detail. We also use it to identify fire ratings. Okay, so we'll color all of our 2-hour walls red and all of our 1-hour walls green. And we do the same thing with our doors to make sure that the doors rating matches the walls rating. You can quickly see a red-green wall door situation, quickly see an unrated opening versus a wall. Okay, and we also like to use it to isolate the interiors from a core and shell if we're doing a TI build-out inside of a core and shell project. So we can then start to separate that, and basically we assign a custom parameter to all of the stuff that's part of the TI. Okay. Now, a lot of this can be done with phasing. How many people use phasing? Okay. So, so those of you that didn't raise your hand, you're not using phasing because you're doing all new construction, or you're not using phasing because nobody knew it was there, or you're not using phasing because it's confusing. Okay, so a lot of people do find it confusing, myself included. I understand how it works, but I find it fairly difficult sometimes to get the phasing to display what I'd like it to. And when it doesn't do that, we use filters to control that. Okay, so basically the filter system allows you to just assign a custom parameter to something and basically make it part of a filter. So downsides to filters. They only apply to a single view. Okay, so if you want to apply a particular filter to all of your views, you either have to go to the view templates, and I'll talk about that in a minute, or you need to manually go set each one. So you have to add the filter or filters to your views and then go set all your overrides. Okay. And you have to set the criteria and the overrides separately. So I've run into a lot of cases where we build the filter and we think we have the criteria correct, and we go to the view, we assign a color coding to it, and nothing happens. Okay. Then you got to go back and debug the criteria to make sure that the override is actually overriding something, or vice versa. So we find ourselves jumping back and forth a lot when we're building new filters. Okay. Again, that makes the whole thing more labor intensive than using a Workset. Okay, which is why they're our next level down. We would use our Workset first, our filters would be second. Okay. So a couple of tips. Consider standardizing your filter criteria. Okay. If you guys have CAD BIM standards, your filter criteria should be written in your BIM standards somewhere so that users know what criteria they should be filtering to. Or consider putting them in your Revit template so that when the user starts, they automatically get the filters you would like them to use. Also, consider standardizing view templates with the filters pre-applied. So, how many people here have a standard colorization system for walls? Okay. Beams? Rick, you guys have one, right? Okay. So PCS has a standard colorization for beams, columns, joists, bearing walls, everything, right? Okay. And you guys use filters to apply those? Okay. So, and we have a standardized, so this wall, we have standardized colorizations for all of our varying wall types. Okay, so we've got concrete walls, masonry walls, brick walls, gypsum board walls, furring walls, et cetera, et cetera. And so we have all that information built into our template so that whenever a wall turns up orange in a filter, we automatically know it's GWB and nobody has to explain that to anybody. Okay? So we have the view templates set up to do that, and I'm going to talk about a new feature in 2013 that allows you to automatically apply that. Not to say that it doesn't work in 2012, because we've been using it for 4 years, it works great, but 2013 has a new feature that lets you just do it without any user interaction whatsoever. Okay? Now, I put the category overrides below the filters because although they tend to be a little more coarse than the filters, we typically go to the filters before we go to straight category overrides. Okay? So everybody knows the category override is the standard visibility in graphics where you turn on and off a particular category or override that entire category's color, pattern, line type, etc. Okay? Now, if you go to override walls, for instance, okay, all your walls are going to change based on whatever you put into that category in that particular view. So if you want your walls to be half-toned, if you want your walls to be green, if you want your walls to be blue, okay, you can override that, but you can't do it on a multiple level. You basically get all or nothing. Okay? Now, the reason that that's a problem is that very often users think, oh, we just see this little piece of the building, and we're going to go override the walls to half-tone them, so that the furniture will punch out or something like that. But then someone comes along and duplicates that view because it was misnamed, and the walls end up half-tone on a sheet that gets printed that they're not supposed to be. Okay. The other thing is that very often people will hide stuff using this category tool. You'll open the view up and go to dimension something, and it's not there. Okay. So we're not a real big fan of the category overrides, and we don't use them a whole lot. Eventually you do need them. And I'll talk a couple areas where we do that. We use them specifically with discipline to hide specific items. Okay. The one area we do use them is on the detail level. So we very often will need to show our walls at a higher level of detail than everything else, okay? Or our structure, okay? Everybody knows that structure, when it comes in at coarse, is just a single line. And if you cut a section through it, it's a dot, okay? So we'll very often use the category overrides to push the structure up to medium or fine so that we can actually see the structure. But we still want the rest of our items to be coarse. Okay. The other one that we use frequently is pipes. Okay. Pipes don't actually show the pipe thickness until fine. So if you set your view to medium, your pipes will be single line. Okay. You may not want everything else to be fine, but you'll need your pipes to be fine. So we come in and we do a category override on pipes and structure. Those are the two primary ones we do. We don't change their color, we don't change their line type, we just change their detail level. Okay? The other one we use a lot is halftone. So we may want to halftone furniture, we may want to halftone doors. We use the halftone a lot to reduce the background of specific items. Okay? But we find ourselves often using filters to control that because sometimes the halftoning is just too coarse. So here's an example where we half-toned the floors and we overrode them to coarse so that we didn't see all of the little pieces floating around in the floor. Okay, this is this floor has actually got the metal deck and everything on it, but we didn't want to call attention to that, so not only did we half-tone it, we turned it down to coarse so that you can just see it as a slab. Okay, so that's just one area where we like to do stuff like that. Level 5, manual overrides. So manual overrides is basically where you hide a particular element or group of elements in a particular view by right-clicking on them. Okay? This is overused a lot in Revit. The reason it's overused is because it's the first thing the user sees. He just right-clicks on the stuff, oh look, there's hide, I hide it. Okay? And then everybody else opens it and goes, where'd it go? Okay, and this was on Scott Davis's, this was number 3 on Scott Davis's list? Or 2? It's in the top 5. Yes, we do. The list is posted, right? Yep. And that's a great list. Frankly, I'm glad he's actually documented that. But the manual overrides drive the rest of the world absolutely bonkers because you have no idea what someone has gone in there and hid. Okay? And so we have it at level 5 on our organizational list because it's the last resort. Okay? It's the last thing we do to get rid of something in a particular view. It's not the first, it's the last. Okay? Now, using the overrides to change the object, that's a little different. And we do use that one quite a bit. When we're jumping into a detail and we don't like the way something looks, we will manually change how it appears, but we will not hide it unless we have no other resort. Okay? So, a new feature in 2013 are selection sets. Okay? You can actually select a group of objects now in 2013 and save that selection to your filter list. And it becomes sort of a manual filter. And you then have the ability to reselect that filter later and do something to it. You can hide it, you can override it, you can change its color. Okay? Now, again, I haven't used it because we haven't technically upgraded to 13 yet, but we've seen some of these new little features. It's a nice tool to be able to manually grab a group of items that you want associated with each other and select them. Now, in my current workflow, I probably would have put them on their own workset, okay, and used that workset to do the overrides. But this is a new feature, so we're kind of looking into how functional it actually turns out to be and whether there's any pitfalls with using it or not. Okay? So, simplifying it, okay? Because again, if it isn't simple, nobody's going to do it. Okay, we can make it as complicated as we want, we know it'll work, but if it isn't, nobody uses it, it all falls down very, very quickly. Okay? So, visibility to the entire team is key for this to work. Everybody's got to know what goes where and what goes and how it fits. Okay? Are you using work sets for this particular project? Are we going to use filters? What filters are we going to use? Are the filters already in the template? Has someone been assigned to keep track of them? Okay. Users also need to know what views have the various pieces of information. This is what I found to be the biggest problem, is that the user opens the default 3D view and then starts hiding stuff. Okay? And then they leave that view sitting there with all that stuff hidden, and then someone says, oh, you shouldn't leave the default 3D view, you should rename it. So they rename it, work exterior. Okay? Well, then the next person comes along and he thinks that's the working view for the exterior in 3D. He opens it and discovers that 3/4 of the building is hidden. Okay? And it has to go manually find stuff, et cetera, et cetera. So users need to know how to access views, and someone needs to be in charge of keeping track of those views. Okay? Otherwise, as I said, hide in view will be their default behavior. Okay? Make sure you create your workset name and scope options, documents. Okay? Your BIM lead needs to do this with input from the team, and make sure everybody understands the scope of every workset. So this is our workset scope document, or part of it. Okay? So we have a series of work sets that we use, or a series of names that we use, and they're guidelines because, again, every project has a little bit different nuance on how the work sets get laid out. So we have these guidelines that tell us what work set and then what the scope should be. That doesn't mean that when we get to a project and the project is a little odd that we have to change the scope, but when we get to that project, we write a new scope for that particular work set. Okay? But in our projects, you will see similarly named work sets in every single project. Matter of fact, almost always the same. Okay? Then you need to set up views that access all of this organization. Okay? You need views that have filters applied to it. You need views that have work sets applied to it. You need views that have color codes applied to it. You need to have views for all of these pieces. Don't alter the view properties of a particular view. Make a new one. Okay. Again, it comes back to this, if I open a view and everything is hidden, I'm going to be confused as to what that view is there for. If I open a view and it looks exactly like what I think it's supposed to be, stuff's not manually hidden, stuff's color-coded, stuff's lined up, stuff's showing the way I see it, then I'm going to understand what I'm looking for and I can access the information faster, and I'm less inclined to start manually hiding things. Okay? The idea is to make it easy for the user to get what they need so they don't start messing with your system. Okay? And if you look, you'll see that I've got 3 views here. Work exterior WSQC, which is the one we looked at earlier. I've got work ghost exterior, where the exterior is ghosted. And I've got work no exterior, where the exterior walls are turned off so we can see into the building. Okay, so that's the biggest thing, is that the user is going to come up and he's going to open the work exterior and say, oh, I can't see in the building, and he's going to start clicking on the exterior walls and hiding them. Okay, if there's one where he can see in there, then he doesn't need to do that. And then project browser naming and filtering. How many people here customize their project browser? Everybody, please? Yes, okay. All right, so if you've got 40,000 views, we come back again to the same problem, that the user is not going to know which one to look at. They're not going to be able to find what they're looking for, and they're going to basically make a new one and start doing stuff to it. Okay? So you can organize your views in a couple of different ways, and I've got 3 different sort of ways that we can manage it. The first one is create a special parameter that organizes your views into groups. Okay? So ours is called worksheet. You can call it whatever you'd like. It basically allows you to group your project browser by any type of way you'd like. Okay, so you can group all of your working views together, you can group all your sheet views together, all your presentation views, etc. Okay? The issue is that you have to type this into every single view you create. So it is an extra step for users, and if they don't do it, you end up with the famous question mark group, where everything is grouped under this question mark. Okay? So it's one way to do it, maybe not the best, maybe not the worst, okay? Number 2, you use the view name as a prefix to group your views together, okay? So in this case, we put an S or a W in front of our work and our sheet views, and we tell this project browser to group by view name, but only using the first character. So all of our W views go together, and all of our S views go together. Okay? This system is fairly extensible in that you can also group by 2 leading characters, or 3, or 4, or 5, or 6. So you can actually create a fairly complex, though probably too complex, system to group all your views. Okay? We like the simple W and S. Now, its downfall, of course, is if the user forgets to put the W or the S in front of it, or if they misname, it automatically groups by that first character no matter what it is. Okay? But it's, in my opinion, less work than typing an entire parameter for every single view. Okay? It also very quickly educates them on the value of typing your view names properly. What's going to happen is they're going to make a new view and it's going to disappear. It's going to be pushed up into the question mark, or it's going to turn into its own category, and they're going to realize that it's not in the right spot immediately. With this method, where we actually use a separate parameter, everything goes into the question marks, and eventually people just stop caring and they deal with the question marks. Okay? This method, every view that they mistype is going to pull up its own folder. And then in 2013, in 2012 and back, we could do this with sections, details, and elevations, but in 2013, we can now create view types for every view we'd like. Okay? So if you've moved to 2013, you can actually create separate floor plan types, you can create separate 3D types, you can create section types, detail types, elevation types, etc. And you can force a template, a view template, to be applied to the view when it's created and actually prevent the user from changing that template without altering the type. So if you have a series of template items that you would like on a particular working view, you can set up a work floor plan template, apply it to every work view, and every time someone creates a new work view, it automatically applies the template. And like everything else in Revit, if they use the wrong view type, you just come back later and switch it, and all the type properties change. Okay? So we do this currently with all of our sections, elevations, and details. We're thinking about very quickly moving it into 13, where we do this with our floor plans and everything else as well. Okay? So here's what the 13 browser looks like with that feature turned on. You can see we've got, at the top, we've got egress plans, we've got sheet plans, work plans. Okay, we've got building sections, wall sections, work sections, details, door details, interior details. And if you look at the type properties of the floor plan, you can see we've got a view template pre-applied that automatically puts the worksheet value in and then sets any settings that we'd like for the particular working plan. Okay, so we see this as a replacement for basically the other 2 methods, because it applies all of the information in one type, and if you need different information, you make a new type. Okay? So just like everything else in Revit, it works on the type system. Okay, family naming. So large projects are going to have lots of families, okay, lots of content that you're going to need to manage. And for the users to use the right content of information is fairly critical. Okay, so I got a couple of tips for some content organization. Number 1, maintain your firm library. Everybody here has a firm library beyond just the stock Revit? Yes? Please say yes. Okay. We like to prefix the name on all of the firm content that's been approved and is in our library. So we put QGI in front of everything that is in our library. Okay? And that lets the user have a quick visualization of what is a firm piece of content versus what is either stock Revit content, came from Seek, downloaded from Revit City, or built themselves. Okay? We try to limit our types to less than 10 per family. Okay? I really like keeping around 6, but I've got a few that have 10. And it's tempting to use the quote-unquote all-in-one families where you have one door that basically makes every door under the sun. But it's really hard to organize, because as soon as you hit that plus sign, you're going to get 750 types underneath that one particular family. Okay? So what we're trying to do is simplify it for the user to be able to find what they're looking for. And then make sure you mine your old projects and utilize those families in your firm library. Make sure you go back and pull those out. Revit's got a really great system that can save every component family out into a temporary folder in one basic step. okay? And so you can go grab all that information, open it in the family editor, review it, and determine what's good and what's bad and dump it. I realize that we all have, tons of time to sit around and do that all day. But it's really important that you guys try to get some time to be able to go back to old projects and pull good families out of them. Because if you don't, the users will, and then you don't have any control over what exactly they're using in future projects. Okay. So this is what our project browser looks like with some of our QGI families in front of it. So we have QGI opening and QGI opening CMU lintel. Okay. And you see we've got a lot of type names in there. I broke my less than 10 rule. Okay. But almost all of those were added during the project. So when it came, it only had 6. And then we needed more types, we added more types. There's nothing wrong with adding those types during the project. If you need them, you need them. But when the user first gets them, they shouldn't have to sift through 750 types just to find the one particular door that they need. Okay. We also are real careful on our type naming to make sure that they sort together so that the groups, you can see our masonry openings are grouped together with their sizes versus our standard openings, which are grouped together with their particular sizes. Okay. So we're trying to use prefixes and short, quick names so that we can quickly group things together so that users can find them quickly. Okay. 2013 has introduced a search function for the project browser. I've tried it and it works. I'm not entirely sure that it's functional though, because you have to basically get to the search function, wait for it to come up, and then you have to type the value into it and it'll find it, but then the search dialog won't go away until you click OK. So it's a lot of steps to find something. I hope it'll get better as it goes along, but it's at least an initial start. Okay. So I want to thank everybody for coming tonight, or today, sorry. Anybody have any questions about this? I want to quickly do a demo too afterwards here to show you guys how we sort of implement this directly in Revit. But I figured I'd just break for about 2 minutes, take any questions people had, and then I could address them inside Revit. Yep. So his question was, is there a good naming convention, maybe CSI or something like that, to group your ceilings together? And there is. Are you talking about in the folders in the library, or in the project browser itself? Yeah. So the search function helps, but if you've miscategorized or misnamed something, Revit can't help you with that. And I'm the first one to say that someone comes in here and comes down and grabs a door. Where are my doors? There we go, doors. Here's single flush. We duplicate that and we call it, and we go 30 by 96, and we're done. But we never change the size of that door. So even though it says 30 by 96, it's still actually 30 by 84. Okay. And the only way that we can ever get users to really understand that is to have them make that mistake about 50 or 60 times and get yelled at by 10 or 15 different people and or fired or something to that effect before they realize that it's important that when you change the family name of something that you also go back and change the size information. Okay. So I don't know that I have a good answer for you, Larry, except that if you guys have something in writing that says family name shall contain this, and this, versus name it whatever you want, and each family will have 6 types or less, and they will reflect the size and or configuration of that particular item, then you need to have something and you need to sort of educate people on how that all works, but you also need to make it simple. Okay, so don't make a family name CSI, because you'd be surprised how many people here can't decipher CSI. Okay. Now, if everybody in your firm is a CSI whiz and can immediately tell you what the sixth character is on the drywall, then great. But as soon as I throw CSI at somebody, they're saying, I don't know what that means. Okay. So, and we've run into that with keynotes. We've run into a lot of things where the end user doesn't fully understand that. The person that made it knew what it was, and it's categorized correctly, but they can't decipher the code. So we use English, simple and short as we can, and we prefix everything with our QGI.
When I say CSI, it's section 8 or 8,000. So you use the word over. I'm not talking about.
Sure, but then when you get into the actual family name, right? I mean, so Revit can't use CSI because Revit has fixed number categories and they don't line up. Okay, so your doors are always going to be doors. Your air terminals are going to be air terminals, and they're always going to be alphabetical. And there's no way to alter the category names inside Revit, so you can't reorganize it. You just have to live with it. So we organized our library based on their categories. Okay, because it just seemed the simplest way to do it. I don't necessarily agree with it, but we did. Okay, and so. It's one of those things where if you don't have a good way to manage it, you just have to work with what they gave you. Having it in writing is a real big key to that. Yep.
Do you see the value in giving the category with the category as like a single flush door? I've heard opinions that name should be door single flush. In my opinion, it's like the folder in the library, and then with the project graph, the project. But if that family is outside of the file structure, like say you have a whole folder, miscellaneous families across different categories, is there a way or have you run into a problem with that situation?
Yes, I have. And sure. So the question is that should the actual category of the object be included in the family name along with something describing it? And yes, I agree with you. It should be in there. That single flush door you're looking at is just the stock Revit door that I grabbed. Ours is QGI door and then what it is. So we have the word door in all of our doors. We try to use the family name or the category name when we can, but some of them just get too long. So we don't have furniture, for instance, in all of our furniture. Just because we thought about typing QGI Fern, but then we ended up with these huge file names. So our furniture is all just QGI couch. And I'm assuming that if we describe something as a couch, people know what it is. But yes, it would, if it was multi-category like that, it would definitely appear in a funny location because it would be under C instead of under F. But most of our primary objects, our doors, our windows, our structural pieces, et cetera, are all listed with the category in it, if not abbreviated, then in its full. Okay. Anybody got any other questions? Scott? You're talking about on the levels itself?
Yeah, so we have like the level of plans, calling it S level 1. You just rename that there, not override all views associated with it.
Correct. So when we make a new view, so we'll make a new floor plan, go level 1. Okay, come back up here. Okay, if I rename this level 1. Okay. Oops, didn't pick up on it. Okay. So the question is that how do you get the level name and the view name from associating with each other? So Revit asks you when you make a new floor plan and you rename it, do you want to change the level name and associate them? I always say no. And as soon as you say no, they become disconnected and they never bother you again. You have to do it once for each level or once for each view, but once you do it, then it takes care of the problem. Okay? Now, the other thing that we're looking at is how the view templates can control that based on the type name the type properties in 2013. So in 2013, we have more control in that we can assign a view template directly to the view, and it'll always have that view template. So a lot of this stuff seems like we can start to handle with the view templates in 2013. But prior to 2013, you just have to try to rename the view. When Revit asks you, do you want to rename the level, say no. Yeah. Otherwise, you end up with all your levels with S or W in front of them. Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Good. Well, thank you everybody for coming. I guess we're a little early. Not too bad. I'll let Rob.
All right, thanks a lot, Chris, for doing that. So the one view that he mentioned, or that one document he mentioned in there with that 33 view, or I wrote it down, 33 reasons why I can't see it in my view. If you go to the SeaRUG downloads page, you go check that out that's February's presentation that Scott Davis did. Great presentation, we recorded, it's up there. But there's also a little document that we created that we branded with SeaRUG on it, so you can download it and stick it up on your backboard. It's a great tool to give to all your users, and then you say to them, basically, if you can't find it, go through this list before you call me.
And theoretically, if you guys set up these systems, you won't have to use it.
Right, oh, there you go. That was that for a plug. So yeah, thank you, Chris. That was a great presentation. Thank you very much. He'll hang out here afterwards if you want to come down and have any questions for him, whether about the presentation or his company. We'll do a notice send out, or maybe just look by the end of the month up at the SeaRUG page to hopefully we'll have this up there and posted for you. If you have any sponsorship questions, feel free to come by and see me. Next meeting is July 18th, and it looks like there's some leftovers over here if anybody didn't get enough. And thanks everybody, and we'll see you next month. Appreciate it.